And we're up and running. Hold on, let me switch there. Kill the music. Walk, Gunzy.
Hi, guys. My background is messing with me.
Yeah, you're messing with me too. I got to get the logos off there. Hey, hello. Now you can see me.
Hi, guys. Welcome back. For those of you who were asking where the Stargate went, it's back up.
Yeah, they were looking for that last time, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. It's been, God, at least a year since you've had it up that I can remember.
I can't remember. I've slept since then.
Is what it is, right? So that's Lindsay. We missed last week. I was away and you just couldn't do it, right?
Right.
Oh, well, too bad, so sad.
Oh, too bad. So sad. Thank you for coming.
You're breaking up on the sound there, darling.
I'm not doing anything.
It's a you problem.
My background is just bugging me now.
I don't know if we'll hype it up. All right. So, yeah, they're all saying, what the heck, Lindsay? So, just so you know. Anyway, so, yeah, we've been off for a couple of weeks or a week. I was away visiting family, had a wonderful time. And you were doing your thing. So, we're back. So, today I wanted to that is not the most seamless green skin. They're just getting on. Oh, she took it away. I wanted to kind of talk about something we haven't talked about in at least a year, probably longer, which is shared parenting. And what's driving it is, if you haven't seen it yet, Mississippi has a bill in, which is really not all that different than most of the other bills out there. It's not a perfect bill, not a bad bill. It's kind of what most of them are. Basically saying that the presumption should be at the start that both parents are equal and fit. And then you proceed from there, as opposed to the current law in Mississippi and in most states, which is one parent's going to be the winner, one parent's going to be the loser, let the fighting commence, which has created a ton of acrimony across the country, as we know, made the lawyers a shit ton of money. And guess who's the number one people opposed to it, Lindsay?
Judges
and
lawyers.
That's who's opposed to it. So I'm going to be doing a video on this in depth, but I thought it would be really kind of good. Are you reading the comments? There's some good ones. I thought we would get into it a little bit because we haven't covered it before. And we're not going to get into the specifics of the bill per se, because it really is not all that much different than all the other bills we've discussed before or any other shared parenting bill I've seen. It's just establishing a presumption that both parents are equal and fit at the beginning. And of course, the Bar Association has an absolute problem with that, because we can't assume that both parents are fit and equal. My God.
Well, that gets rid of all of the animosity, and then they have no way to make money.
But think about that argument, right? They're literally arguing that by default, one parent is quote unquote defective. Well, then why would you leave the parent? Let's say they stayed married. Wouldn't you take the kid away then? And that's if there's a bad parent, shouldn't CPS take the kid away automatically?
Well, I mean,
come on. Logic would dictate, right? But it's, again, I saw this when we were lobbying for it in New York 20 odd years ago now, 22. The exact same arguments are coming out. Well, what about abuse? Well, what about this and that and everything else? And it's the same old lame ass arguments they've been making literally for 30 years now, all of which have been thoroughly debunked, all of which, by the way, were disproven because they made the same arguments in Missouri, Kansas. And oh, by the way, the law passed and none of those issues have cropped up,
Well, ironically enough, they tried this in Arkansas, and where equal shared parenting was at the big, presumed at the beginning, And all of those things that they talk about, child abuse, DV, all of those things dropped by 400%.
Yeah.
It actually went down, which would seem to indicate that there is some reason to allege certain behaviors because, you're trying to weight the scales in your favor.
Well, again, the more acrimony there is, the more money the lawyers make. So, like, I pulled up an article from, I have it over here to my left, from Mississippi Today, which is, a paper down there, a Pulitzer Prize winning nonprofit news, as they claim themselves. La-di frickin' da, right? And they made quite the article, and you can go look it up. If you just Google search Mississippi Today shared parenting, it'll pop right up. And all they're talking about is how attorneys and judges statewide are voicing opposition to the bill that would make joint custody of the children the standard in all divorce cases. The proposal becomes law. Tens of thousands of parents could be affected by the policy, which only exists in 5 other states. Of course, they're taking a shot to say, well, we shouldn't pass it because only 5 states have it. The question is, where's the other 45? Why don't they have it? Why do they presume by default one parent has to be a problem, defective, bad parent, whatever terminology you want to use? And oh, by the way, it's always the father. It's never the mother. And that's what they want. Their entire argument behind it is that, and I'll just read one of them. The overriding presumption of joint custody will be difficult, and too many vulnerable parents will not receive sole custody when that's best for them and their children. Well, flip that. Right now, too many parents are receiving sole custody. Because, again, people want to argue that joint custody means both parents have a say. That only applies to education and medical. They have no other say. Joint custody is a misnomer. It does not mean you have equal time, right? You can have what is the standard order across the country, which is every other weekend. So 4 days a month one parent gets. And you might get a pizza date, as I call it, one time a week for dinner. That's what they want to keep going because they know the parties will fight tooth and nail and bankrupt themselves in order to try and remain a parent, both sides. But they don't want that to go away. They want that acrimony because roughly $4 billion a year gets paid to attorneys from the families. You're taking the money out of the kids' hands and mouths, the roofs over their head, to hand it to super rich attorneys to buy a new boat. That's their argument. And it's just, what's appalling to me, Lindsay, it's the same argument I saw in the 90s.
Well, it's also a false argument because, if that's the idea that one parent is deemed unfit, then by that logic, as soon as a child is born, the state should come into every household in the entire country and determine which parent is fit and which parent isn't.
And if they don't agree to separate and divorce, then the kid should be taken away from both parents.
Exactly. And that everyone is sitting in the comments going, well, that's just stupid. I agree. And yet that's the logic that we see being played out here. We know we have tons of data, not just from our country, but from other countries that prove that it is the best interest for a healthy, happy child to have access to both parents. We know that. So why are we still following the same script? And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And we have all these societal problems as a result. And this is something that hasn't been tried yet, or it's only been tried in 5 other states. So it all comes down to the money. That's the truth. It all comes down to the money. That's why the judges and the lawyers are the ones who are fighting tooth and nail to not have this passed versus the parents and the children. And who ultimately loses in family court? The kids.
But they don't care about the kids.
Well, no, obviously not.
They really don't care about the kids.
They really don't.
So again, you can go look at the article, but Mississippi Today, in their article says they spoke to 8 divorce attorneys in the state about the issue. That's it. But they wanted their whole basis to be on what divorce attorneys said. And they were all against the bill. Color me shocked. Shocked that people who stand to make millions of dollars over their career would oppose a bill that would take that money away. That's some fine Pulitzer Prize winning journalism you did there, Mississippi Today. Wow. Really way to step out on a limb there, you know? And so like 7 said it would be detrimental to women and children. Well, yeah, because women by default get the custody. How is it detrimental to children? See, that's the other thing. They never say what it is, right?
Well, I would actually argue that it would be not detrimental to women, because aren't women always sitting there screaming about, I have to do it all. He never helps. He never has anything. Why doesn't he help? Well, he doesn't help because you won't give him custody. You fight tooth and nail to win because you want to punish him. And because lawyers actually are incentivized to create animosity. So you can have you can have a couple that when they first go into court, before they talk to a lawyer, they're amicable. But the minute they talk to a lawyer, I can get you full custody. I can get you the house. I can get you both cars. I can get you half his paycheck. I can get you half his Social Security. And suddenly you're now incentivized to fight. It's like Mortal Kombat. And that's what we see happening over and over and over and over and over again. And again, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, repeatedly, and expecting a different result. So if we want well-rounded children, we want to get rid of a whole bunch of, societal issues, boys falling behind in school, girls having low self-esteem and opinions of themselves, school pew-pews. The best thing we can do is to try something different.
Teen pregnancy is another one.
Teen pregnancy is another one. Finishing high school dropout rates is tied to fatherlessness. Prison. How many boys end up in prisons? We're sitting there complaining. Feminists are sitting here complaining all the time about how young men are committing crimes in larger and larger numbers. Well, yeah, because they have no positive male role models. Because
that's actually false. Crime has significantly dropped in the last 30 years, but it's actually women committing more crimes, not men. But we don't have that. That's a whole other discussion.
That's a whole different. Whether or not
we may table that one for next week, because that might be a good topic.
Whether or not it's true, they're still harping about it.
Oh yeah, they're still saying it. Of course,
they're still saying it, whether or not it's true.
Yeah.
And so we have all these problems in society that are all linked back for 50 years now to fatherlessness, the absence of a father in the home, the absence of a male role model, gang participation is another one, which could be it will never go completely away, but it could be drastically reduced. And all these problems, they want to fight the symptoms, but the actual cure for the problem is put the father back in the home, let him parent. And the lawyers and the judges are going, no, we can't do that. Let's try to just patch the hole again. We see the giant crack in, the Hoover Dam. Let's go get another Band-Aid and pray that'll help.
And again, as I said, they keep trotting out the same old tired trope arguments, so they interviewed a Mac Varner, who was a practicing family law for 50 years in Vicksburg. And he was shocked that the bill's author, a Republican from Tupelo, because we had to make sure we put it in the party, because I hate to break it to you, but both parties have put the same bills in, is not an attorney, but an accountant. I actually think that's a positive, right? Because an accountant will look at the numbers and go, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Whereas an attorney will go, oh, it's going to hurt my pocketbook. Yeah. And he said, the bottom line is they don't know what they're doing. If passed, the legislation would help fathers evade child support, which is a lie, because it does not affect child support in almost every state in any way, shape, or form. Child support is based on who is the primary custodian, meaning who's got the kids more. That the other parent pays, whether it's 51.49 or 50.1, 49.9, or 95.5. One parent is paying child support. So that's a lie that's actually published in the paper.
Well, not only that, but it's a lie either way, because even if they weren't paying child support, what do you think custody is? Custody is child support. I've been saying this for years. When the child is with you, you pay 100% of their upkeep, their needs, their wants, everything. You do that. I do that with my two children and my parent. Mr. Squirrel and I are happily married. That's what having a child is. One of the funniest things my child has ever told me is, "I don't cost anything." Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The
But to be fair, they don't cost as much as everybody thinks they do either.
No, they don't. But still, like, if the child is with you, you're covering their costs 100%. You're paying for all of their clothes, their food, the extra that you need for the extra room so that they can have a room over their head, the extra utilities, the extra water usage, all of it. That is child support. So custody, having physical custody of your child, is child support. The thing that everyone's mad about is that they're not going to give money away to the disadvantaged, lower paying parent, which ironically, this particular bill, because I went and actually read it, still says in child support that they're going to take the two incomes of the parents, and whichever one is paying less, the other parent's paying more is going to supplement so that they're even. So no.
Just like it's in pretty much every
other state.
It doesn't affect child support in any way. So that attorney that they're quoting is either a complete moron or he's lying. Either he doesn't know the actual law that his 50 years of experience, as they're claiming, which is scary, or he's lying. Which is it? It can't be, it's one or the other. It can't be both, right? And that's the problem, right? And again, they made this argument 30 years ago and it was debunked back then. You were talking about like how much to raise a kid. A few months back, I don't know, it was in the fall, I was looking at one of those, how much it costs to raise a kid over their 18 years. And when you actually look at it, and the number was like $500,000, I'm rounding it, right? They took the entire mortgage for the house as paying for the kid. Well, to your point, you said he only needs one room. You still need the house or the apartment, right? But they took the entire cost of the mortgage to factor it in to inflate the number. Same thing with utilities, right? A kid effect on the utility bills, maybe 10, 15%. Maybe, if that, right? You're still going to have the electric bill. It's not going to go away if you get rid of the kid. It's still there. But they took the entire cost of the utility, and you can carry that through all the other expenses of the household. Food's the same thing. Well, it costs $1,000 a month to feed a kid. No, it doesn't. Not even. That's if you're feeding them caviar every night, maybe. And no kid should be eating caviar every night, right? I mean, come on. But again, that's what these attorneys are claiming in this article, right? That one, fathers just don't want to pay child support. They don't want. He goes on to say that in a lot of instances they don't want joint custody. They just don't want to have to pay child support. That's a load of crap. And that tells me he's either never represented a man or he's lying. And he's lying to pad his own pocketbook. See, the thing that men get it eventually. It takes a while in some of them. Women, I don't think ever get it. They will fight tooth and nail over $10. And they'll pay an attorney $400 an hour to win $50 a week. And I actually was working with a guy, it's now 2 years ago, because I do coaching for divorce, and it was $50 a week he was fighting for. The difference, $50 a week. He had spent over $10,000 in attorney fees with more to come. All right. That's what, 200 weeks? Or not, it was 50 a month. I'm sorry, 200 months. I said week, I meant month. $50 a month. That's 200 months. The kid was 13 years old. The math ain't mathing. And when I finally sat him down and walked him through the logic, he still didn't get it. And I gave up. I'm like, dude, I can't help you at that point, right? If you want to spend $10, $15, $20,000 to save yourself what, 50 times 6, $3,000, by all means, go right ahead. But that's beyond stupid to me. But that's what happens, right? The attorneys know, and I've had attorneys tell me this. They know if they can get the woman in particular riled up, they're going to make bank. And that's why, you mentioned earlier, they'll tell her she's going to win everything. Their fees are going to be forced to be paid by the husband, which is rarely the case, right? And these women, and it's funny you mentioned that, because in the article, they talk about a Pamela Stokes who endured a decade-long custody battle with her ex-husband. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but at the end of it, she said she had almost no money after her divorce. Gee, why might that be? Because it all went to the attorney? No, but she had to reinvent herself. To make her the heroine. And the money her ex-husband gives her in child support doesn't cover the cost of daycare. Okay. Why is it his entire responsibility to cover the daycare? Right. And again, she played the whole single mother card. Again, it's the same tired tropes they've argued for 30 years, all of which has been debunked thoroughly. They'll make the argument about abuse. Well, if you're going to look at the numbers, mothers by far are more likely to abuse a child than fathers are.
Wouldn't that be an argument for 50-50 or more shared parenting? Because the argument that women always make when we bring this up and say that women abuse, well, obviously that happens more because they have more custody. They're with the children more. Okay, if that's your
logical,
response, then, and I've had women say this to me. We're talking about child abuse by the numbers, and under the age of I believe it's like from 12 under, but specifically from 6 and under, so from infancy all the way up to 6 years of age, child abuse is primarily from mothers, overwhelmingly, by far,
at least double that
of fathers. And then the second most dangerous person to the child during those years is the mother's live-in boyfriend, not the biological father. So I said, okay, so wouldn't that mean that, and they're like, well, women do it more often because they're the ones that have the children more often. Okay, so wouldn't it stand to reason that if you give the child to their father part of the time, the burden of being the single mom, the overburdened mother that's overburdened with the majority of childcare, wouldn't that lessen? Well, and I'm like,
I love, we've got the old troll account on TikTok hiding behind a fake card. This dude is off. Where are your actual facts, guy? I've done more research on this in the last hour than you have in your entire life. So if you don't know the facts, so be it. But again, maybe here's a thought. Instead of hiding behind a fake troll profile, show your face. Have a little ball.
There's the CDC custodial mothers and fathers that comes out every year. From the CDC. Now, this is a couple years behind because it takes a while to run the numbers. I think the latest one we have is from 2023. That's the one that I'm quoting right now. We also have the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the Department of Human Health Services. I mean, there's all this information out there.
There's literally dozens of studies that I've read. There are books on this. There are attorneys who I've interviewed on this. There are judges that I've talked to on this. There are, I don't know, God knows how many psychologists I've talked to about this, all of whom say that shared parenting should be the norm. The ones who are opposed to it are either directly involved financially, because you can find psychologists that'll go, no, it's not good. And then you find out that guess who the judges are sending the kids to be evaluated? Those psychologists. So those psychologists have no bearing, right? So I always laugh when, what's your source? Where's your facts? I got more facts than you'll ever have in your life, because I have the truth on my side, whereas you have your hate. That's really what it is.
What I always find out interesting is when they ask, what are the facts? I always respond with, what source are you willing to accept? Because 9 times out of 10,
they'll go to Wikipedia as their source. I actually had, this is funny. I had someone debating me who was a PhD and started quoting from Wikipedia. And I'm like, we're done. I can't have this. If you're a freaking PhD and you're quoting Wikipedia as your source, you have a paper PhD. Who are you kidding, right?
What do you have a PhD in? Underwater basket weaving? Feminist dance theory?
And that's why, the fact it is indisputable at this point. This has been researched thoroughly. Go read Warren Farrell's books. If you don't like what Warren has to say, fine. You can say he's a quack. He's not, right? I'm a staunch advocate for him. But go read the data in his books. Every single thing in his book is covered. Like, he has the statistics. He has where he got them from. He has the actual studies, which I've gone and read many of them. So you may hate Warren Farrell, but you can't argue against him unless you can disprove the literally hundreds of things that he cites in his books. And, Richard Reeves is another. I mean, the list is endless, right?
Ironically enough, and I'm actually kind of pissed off at Facebook right now because it ate a whole bunch of my articles that I had posted up ready for me. But way back in like the 1800s, men got custody of their children and women were excluded. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who is well known for the fight for equal shared parenting, she was one of the first. This is the 1860s, by the way, guys. She argued the exact same things we're arguing now, that a child needed access to both parents, that it was proven fact and data back then in the 1860s that access to both parents produced a well-rounded and healthy child. So she was making the same arguments that we're making now, that all the lawyers and the judges are going, no, that's not true. So if it was true in the 1860s and it's still true now, what is the purpose of arguing that it's not true? And that answer is always money.
Well, yeah, and that's it's like the other argument they'll make is it ties the judge's hands. How is it any different? Okay, as it's written right now, the judge has to make a decision based on the facts in front of him or her, right? Right now, the presumption is one parent will get 100% of custody, the other will get 0, and we're coming in from that. That is the way it works right now, whether they want to admit it or not. All shared parenting does is say both parents are equal, 50-50. We come out from that. No judicial discretion is taken away at all. What is put in is that the judge has to justify it. And that's the problem, because judges do not want to have to put down on paper why they made their decision. They just want to automatically award physical custody, because you can talk about joint custody all day long. That means meaningless. What you're talking about is physical custody, how much time the children spend with each parent. That's what matters. So if you're going to start with equal presumption and come out from that, as opposed to 100-0 and come in, how is that any different? Whether you agree with one side or the other as far as which way is the better way to go, they're the same in the sense that the judge has to make a determination. Nothing is taken away from the judge. What is forced on them is accountability, right? They don't like that
word nobody likes anymore.
Oh, they don't like. I should not have to explain why I awarded mom permanent physical custody. That's not my job. I should just be able to pull it out of my ass, which is exactly what they do. I mean, you have to understand, most people have never set foot in family court that are opposed to this stuff. The attorneys, you got to throw them out. But you see a lot of politicians and all that. And I say to them, have you ever set foot in family court? No. Then how do you know what goes on? Because I have. I've seen thousands of cases, including my own. Okay. I know how these judges operate. I know how the attorneys, I know how the law guardians operate. I have seen it in action so many times. And there is a presumption right now that mothers are going to get custody. And anyone who says otherwise is a fool. And again, nobody's trying to take anything away from the mother per se, like your argument, right? It's beneficial to the mother. It takes the load off. They all, the mental and physical load, blah, blah, blah. Take some of the load away, right? It all comes down to the money. And like I said a few minutes ago, mothers will fight tooth and nail to get an extra $100 a month and spend $30,000 on lawyer fees to get it because her attorney told her, well, I'll make him pay it. And then the judge goes, no, she pays her own bills. Do you know how many mothers I've talked to that have had that happen to them? Hundreds. Well, my attorney was telling me all along I wasn't going to have to pay his fees. So I just went along with everything. And now I'm in debt for tens of thousands of dollars. And I would bet money this woman they quoted in there, that's exactly what happened to her. Right. And again, to her argument in there, it's all about the money first. She didn't care about her kids. Right. Every study, every data point, everything says the kids are better off under shared parenting presumption. There's no argument on it. When you actually look at it unequivocally with a fair eye, there's no argument. But they'll throw out, well, it's just about the money. Dads just don't want to pay child support. It's a load of crap. It's a load of crap. And that's the problem with it is we're literally killing our children.
Well, I mean, we're setting them up to drop out of high school at higher rates. We're setting them up to never hold a steady job. We're setting them up to get pregnant in adolescence, teenage, not get married, repeat the same thing, live below the poverty line. Because the three things you can get if you have good parents and to be successful in life is graduate college, don't have children before you get married, graduate college, graduate high school, don't get have children before you get married, and get a job. That's it. 3 things. And all 3 of those things are impaired by fatherlessness, by having absent one parent. And it's the fathers that are getting kicked out. And does that mean that there are not some mothers that are kicked out? No, we're not saying that. Just because there's a disproportionate number or family court disproportionately disadvantages fathers does not mean that no mother has ever gotten screwed in family court.
It's about 15% roughly that fathers are getting awarded primary physical custody. Which is a big jump, by the way, from 20 years ago when it was about 8 in New York.
Yes.
Because we paid to have a study done. It was 92% of the time custody was awarded to the mother in New York in the early 2000s, like 2002, 3, 4, and 5. Because we did a study on it, right? So now it's about 85. So I can't say there hasn't been progress, right? But again, it's this compared to what it should be. And your points are valid, Lindsay, right?
That's also not saying that it's impossible to raise a good child by yourself. There are exceptions all the time. But we take the general pool of knowledge and the majority and most kids, the numbers are all in, most of the kids that are disadvantaged all came from homes where it was raised by a single mother and no dad. Does that mean that it's impossible for a woman to raise a well-rounded child? No. And the same is not in reverse. Although ironically, we do have the numbers that prove that being raised by a single father gives you equal advantage to being raised by both parents, which would seem to imply that women are being overburdened. And if you want to unburden women, it makes sense to give part of the custody away. Take some of the weight off of them. Give dad. And for all the women out there are saying, well, dad just doesn't want to be responsible. Okay, well, then force him to be responsible. Equal shared parenting would force dad to actually be responsible. And yet you see women, in my experience, absent the actual lawyers and judges, the people that I see most opposed to equal shared parenting are all women. The women that are screaming, oh, we're overburdened. Oh, he doesn't do anything. Okay, well, if you force him to have custody, guess what? He'd have to do something. And if he doesn't do it and something harms the child, guess who's going to jail for neglect? So what is the harm in giving him part of the burden? The only thing I can come up with is that you get brownie points in the world of public opinion for being overburdened.
From the coven by playing, the feminist coven, right? It's, if I'm the victim, I can play that victim card all day long. And the problem is when you see single mothers doing that, or mothers in general, or women, but or even guys who, I'll say the same thing. There are guys who make that same argument, right? We know that when they're making that argument, they don't care about the children at all. They don't. They care about themselves. Oh, I'm overburdened. Who gives a shit if you are? You don't matter. Your kids are what matter. That's my argument, right? I don't want to hear who's overburdened.
Well, I would argue that I would argue that most parents are in some way overburdened, married, single, or otherwise. I mean, Lord knows when when Mr. Squirrely was, on the other side of the world with military service, I was stuck doing it all. Does that mean that was I overburdened? Yes. Does it matter past my children? Are my children happy? Are they fed? Are they
taken care of?
Are they taken care of? Are they loved? Do they know that they're loved? Well, then I'm doing something right. And I can sleep when they're 18.
And that's pretty much what I did, right? That's why I had my kids young, so that by 51 they were out the door and I could get some sleep. They make these arguments over and over again, and when you debunk them, they get even angrier. Well, that's not true. Or, then they'll throw, like somebody just threw out on TikTok, well, yeah, but some men don't want to take care of their kids. Okay,
and
less than 5%. Guess what? Some mothers don't either. So that argument is moot. If you're going to make the argument that men don't want to, I'm going to make the argument women don't want to, because there's a lot of women that have walked away from their kids, right? If you're going to make the argument, well, my husband was abusive to the kids. Well, guess what? The data all shows mothers are more abusive. So, hello, right? These are all easily debunked and have been for decades now. And yet this law is controversial if it passes, right? I mean, they're making another argument that was in here. Hold on, I scrolled past it. That judges, that a presumption can be difficult to override. No, it isn't. How is it difficult? All the judge has to do is go, I'm overriding it. I mean, there is nothing in there other than the judge has to explain themselves. What a horrible concept. A judge have to explain why they're denying a parent, mother or father, I might add, the right to parent their child. My God, how is that not in the law? There is no way some judge, and if you've ever been in family court, most trials happen in minutes, right? The average is probably somewhere around a half hour at most. That person, male or female judge, is making a decision for a child potentially up to 18 years based on about, depending on the case, anywhere from 50 to 100 pages of written documentation, if that, and 30 minutes of testimony. That's how most cases are settled, right? People don't want to talk about that. Well, I had a 5-day trial. Okay, you're the exception, not the rule. And if you don't, I don't want you to believe a word I'm saying. Family courts are open to the public. Go sit in the fucking court for a day or two. Don't believe a word I'm saying. But until you've sat in that courtroom, I don't want to hear from you, because I have for many, many days, and not just my own cases. I went and helped guys out for years. Okay. I saw what these courts do. I saw how they worked. And, to be fair to the judges, and I hate doing it, but I have to, their dockets are so overloaded. They don't have 5 hours to give to every case, right? They're reading the motions. The two people show up. She says her thing. He says his. Half hour later, mom gets custody. Boom. That's how it works 90% of the time. And I don't want you to believe a word I'm saying. I want you to go sit in family court. The only way they'll tell you you can't go in is if they're doing an adoption case, or there's certain circumstances where they don't want the facts getting out in the public, abuse and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But the overwhelming majority of cases, you can sit in the gallery, just keep your mouth shut. Don't be making faces or anything like that. Sit there and passive and just watch. It will blow your fucking mind. And it's the first thing I tell every guy that's going through a divorce. take a day off from work and go sit in family court before you have to go in. Because inevitably it blows their mind, just blows them to shreds. Because they think, like I did, I was a fool. First time in family court, I thought it was truth, justice, in the American way. Facts were going to rule, and, honesty and all that. What a load of crap. I found out in about 20 minutes it's a load of crap, because I was the primary caregiver. But all she had to say was, "No, Your Honor, I am." And that was the end of that. She got awarded custody, and I had to pay child support. Right? And I never even actually got to speak that first session. That was the temporary order that was given. And once a temporary order is issued, you're not going to change it. They just roll it over. It happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but it's very rare that they change it.
I'm sorry. I'm watching hubris go on in the comment section on TikTok. We got one woman who thinks that woman is God. The arrogance of women. Oh my fucking God. And we got another one who thinks we hate women because we're arguing that dads aren't, by default bad parents. So
which means in reality, she hates men and fathers, not hating women. See, that's what they do. She's projecting onto us her beliefs. Because, what woman doesn't project? Present company accepted.
This is another one. The one that, ironically, the woman who is doing no amount of hubris right now, her screen name has Andromeda in it. If anyone understands literature, that's hilarious. But and you see women that do this. They'll sit there and say, well, why do you hate women? Why do you hate women? And again, okay, caring about children is not, and protecting dads and protecting everyone's right to have as happy a family as possible is not. And we were just talking about it.
Sorry. She just said, "You don't know me." Yet
I
you
don't
had no
want
problem.
to, babe. I don't want to.
You had no problem telling us what we were thinking and feeling, and we were bad people, and you don't know us. So again, it shows you the mindset, right? Where they think they can throw and say anything they want, but if you say anything back, the same things they said to you, you're evil. You have no argument, honey. Walk away. Walk away. Take the L and walk away. Because you are nothing but double standards and hypocrisy, and it's obvious.
But
go ahead.
But again,
it's funny as hell, actually.
It is hilarious. But the other one that's sitting there talking about how we need to repent and whatever, sweetie, I'm pagan. Don't waste your breath.
Repent for what?
For what? But sitting there saying that we hate women. Look, if women are truly how many times do we see on Facebook that women are overburdened, that dads don't do their part? So allowing the father to have his fair share of equal parenting, that would force him to do his part, and then you would be less burdened. So the people out there are sitting there saying that single mothers are overburdened and they, men aren't helping. Well, then any bill that forces men to, equal shared parenting, so the woman gets her 50% of or roughly, and the guy gets his fair share, then that is nothing but good for women who are sitting there burdening themselves by having the lion's share of the child rearing responsibilities. And this is what baffles me, is that women like this will sit there and argue that somehow asking to take the burden and taking some of the weight away from mothers is somehow hating women.
Well, that's because
that's girl math. That doesn't math.
It's if you say anything negative about a woman, you hate them. But if you say anything bad about a man, you're empowered, right? I mean, feminism's entire shtick is hating men. So if you're a woman, you're a feminist, you hate men by default. So own it. If you're gonna apply the standard to men, then we're gonna apply the standard to you. That's not fair. Yes, it is. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not.
Well, it's Schrodinger's feminist. You're either a strong, empowered woman or you're a weak, helpless victim, depending on which situation benefits you most at any
Yeah,
given time.
and that's the problem, right? All right, real quick, we're about halfway through. Show us some love. Do your little heart thing there, Lindsay. Hold on there. There it is. If you're enjoying the show and you want to follow us, hit the old subscribe or follow. If you hate us, good. We appreciate you commenting because you're helping the algorithm. Keep them coming. But just remember, if you come at us, don't cry when we come back at you, which is what most of you do. That makes you a whiny little bitch if you do. Have a little balls. All right. If you want to come at me, or you want to come at Lindsay, but don't get upset when we come back at you. I just, trolls are trolls, right? All right. So hold on. I'm trying to run the board and talk at the same. That is never a good thing. But along the same lines, another thing they were making as a comment in the thing, we've kind of already touched on this, is that, the argument they were making against it is doling out more rulings of 50-50 custody might give the appearance of equality, but it will make the system less equitable, particularly for survivors of domestic violence. Parents in low-income households and stay-at-home mothers. Again, the tired, old, worn-out argument. What about domestic violence? All right, let's go there. So, Lindsay, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you'll throw the facts out faster than I will. Go.
Domestic violence. All right, so half of all domestic violence is reciprocal and half of all domestic violence is non-reciprocal. Of the reciprocal part, women initiate roughly half of the time. Men initiate the other half of the time. That's you're hitting on each other. Of the non-reciprocal domestic violence, women initiate and are the sole perpetrators 70% of the time.
So if you're going to make the argument that we need to worry about survivors of domestic violence, your argument should be that mothers shouldn't be getting custody.
Also, there are thousands of domestic violence shelters for women all around the country. There are 2 for men. And here's the fun part that no one wants to talk about. Of the domestic violence shelters for women, if you have a male child with you that is over the age of 12, he is not allowed inside. So that means that if you are a battered woman and you are fleeing an abusive man and you have a male child with you that is over the age of 12, you have to either leave your child at home with the violent man or you have to stay in the house with the violent man. Those are your 2 options as a woman.
Got the old arms folded, shaking the head. I love when she does that. Yeah, I mean, again, easily debunked argument, right? But people that make that argument are of the mindset that no woman has ever committed violence against mankind, which, by the way, and I've covered this before on this very program, when we were pushing for shared parenting in New York, the head of NOW brought in a domestic violence expert who ran a shelter, who testified in front of the New York State legislature that in all her time, she had never once seen a woman who was a perpetrator, only men. It's on the record. You can go look it up. In fact, I was actually pulling some of my old testimonies up so I could find that.
Country brings up a good point. Yes, some men defending themselves. In fact, many cases of people, not just men, but primarily men, but also some women who are defending themselves get lumped in with the reciprocal violence category. If you put up your hands or you grab someone in order to try and keep them from hitting you, male or female, oftentimes, most often with a man, but oftentimes with female, you'll be charged. You'll be charged, even though you're trying to defend yourself. And we've also, again, goes back to the other side of the coin, where in the states, Arkansas and hold on.
Do what you gotta do. I'll take over. So another point while she's chit-chatting with her kid.
Sorry, I was bombing.
No, I was just going to make the point while you were doing that, the other argument they were making is, more importantly, I'm quoting now, the argument the fathers deserve a system that they perceive to be more fair is misguided. We don't take the focus off the best interests of the children to satisfy or level the playing field for litigants. Yeah, we do. Because all the proof and data shows that it's in the best interest of the child for both parents to be as close to equally involved as possible. Does that mean it's exactly 50-50? No. Right? It could be 60-40. It could be 70-30. It depends. Every situation is different. People work different hours, different schedules. You know, I've seen so many couples that have divorced that have avoided the acrimony, that genuinely actually love their children and care about them. And sometimes one parent or the other, and I've seen it both ways, has a lot more time, but it's because of the way the work schedule is, right? But they worked together, as opposed to letting some man or woman sitting on a bench wearing a hot robe in the middle of August, who at 4:45 with a 5 p.m. I want to go home, is now deciding some kid's future and just automatically runs the gavel and says, give custody to mom and make him pay child support. That's how a lot of times it happens, right? Or they want to go to lunch or whatever. I mean, the worst, I always tell guys, do everything you can to avoid that 11 o'clock slot and the 4 o'clock slot, right? Or depending on the court, some courts end at 4. So you don't want the last hour before lunch or end of the day. Because what happens during those hours, and I've had attorneys tell me the same thing, those judges will ram through decisions like that because they just want to go home or go to lunch. How is that our default, which is what it is? How is that, they're talking about the best focus of the best interest of the children. How is that in the best interest of the children, right? That's entirely the antithesis of what this person is arguing in that article. But they don't want to have that discussion. And in this, Mississippi, what was that? Did you get that?
No, I heard that.
I don't think it's me. I don't know where it's coming from. No, you lost totally. The squirrel just left. Take over, Lindsay.
That squirrel drove away.
Gone. I need to powder my head again. I'm getting a little shiny. Mostly because I had to turn my AC off because it's so loud you guys wouldn't hear me. So I'm sitting in an 85-degree room right now. So for those of you that want to say I'm all red and sweaty because I'm upset, no, I hate to tell you.
So for all of the people in the comments who keep talking about, well, what about this and what about that and what about this and what about that?
Well, I can white about all day long.
You can what about all day long. There's no such thing as a perfect system. There are going to be bad actors in every camp, and you're never going to be able to save everybody. When we are talking about this, we are talking about generalities. I'm sorry, but the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Does that mean that the few aren't worthy of thing? Yes, they are. But you can either have a perfect system, which will never work, or you can have there's no such thing. There's too many factors. And if you're writing legislation, you have to do the least amount of harm and the most amount of good possible, and try and get as many of the gaps closed that the system can't be taken advantage of. Well, right now, our system is being, taken advantage of left, right, and sideways, not necessarily by the people within the system, but the people running the system. So
people making the money off the system.
A lot of people don't know this, but the states, the lawyers, and the judges are reimbursed by the federal government and the state government for every dollar of child support and alimony that is collected. So they are being incentivized to put more and more people on either alimony, spousal support, or child support orders. And who are the people that are damaged the most in this? The children. Because if you're paying money to either another spouse or the other spouse, or you're paying money, because that's what child support is, it goes to the spouse. It's not going directly to the children, or there's no way to tell that it's going directly to the children. I'm sorry, I have seen far too many women who have come in with their nails done and their hair did while their kid are wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small, to believe that it's going to the children. And who is losing out? The kids.
So Mr. Brass just said, ask them to give an objective definition of the best interest of the child. Well, my friend, I did just that. So again, this goes back 20 odd years, probably 22, 23, when we were testifying in New York for shared parenting in front of the committee. I forget what, I think that was Children and Families Committee, that one, which, by the way, half the committee was attorneys who worked in family court, right? So I said that exact question because they were all, well, we have to operate. They made, one of them made a comment, well, we're operating on, the presumption of the best interest of the children. I'm like, well, can you give me a definition of what that is? What specifically is the best interest of the children? The word salad that spewed out of them was mind-boggling, right? They never, of course, never answered it because their argument is, well, we can't put a specific definition on it. And I agree with them there. It's a nebulous term. It's meaningless. What's the best interest for the children for one child may be something completely different for another, right? Ultimately, it comes down, is the child fed? Does they have a roof over their head? Are they getting an education? Do they have clothes to wear? That's what's in the best interest of their children. Are they loved and cared for, basically? They couldn't even give that. They're like, well, blah, 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 and they went on, and I pushed them a couple times because I'm an asshole. I admit it. And I'm like, give me a definition, because you keep saying that this is your basis, but you have nothing to define it by. So if you're going to argue legislation has to be based on that and you can't define it, you're passing legislation that has no definition. Well, we want to leave it up to the judges.
Which is
okay.
In legality, at the beginning of every bill or law, there is always definitions. They define everything.
Yeah, every term. It might be in the back too sometimes.
We can't define best interest of a child. There at least has to be some kind of observable metrics that we can basically use as a basis. But I mean, this is going to sound radical, but I think that judges should be held accountable for the decisions that they make. If we are allowed to hold doctors who malpractice accountable for malpractice, we should be able to hold judges accountable, or at least have them answer, which this law would actually do, because they would have to justify. And by the way, for all the people sitting there going, well, what about abuse? What about this? If the judge has a legitimate reason for denying one parent primary custody or even majority custody, then that judge would have absolutely no problem. And the law gives purview for saying, due to concerns about potential child abuse or potential child neglect, or insert reason here, and then it would go on record. The problem with that is that now it's on record. So now that parent can come back and go, now, wait a minute.
Yeah. As opposed to, and again, it would mean they'd have to have proof, right? As opposed to, so you got to remember, family court is not criminal court.
It's preponderance of evidence.
It's preponderance of evidence. It's who the judge believes more. And it can be 50.000000001, right? To 49 and however many nines. That's all it takes. And remember, we're in a believe all women, right? So if she says something, because I'll tell you what else has happened. And I've interviewed judges. I've talked to them privately. I hate defending family court judges, but I'm going to now. So get ready to take your pitchforks out and get me for it. All right. But having talked with several of them, including, by the way, the judge that handled my case well after my kids aged out, right? To be fair to them, as I said earlier, they have unbelievable caseloads. Like, it's not uncommon for them to handle 50 cases in a day. It's not. They have to make these decisions with minimal input. They rely on the lawyers to be giving factual information, because, lawyers would never lie or misrepresent. They're relying on law guardians, which are the bottom of the barrel as far as attorney goes. My attorney, God bless her, I loved her. She was evil in a courtroom, to my favor. Used to just make fun of law guardians. She goes, think about what they get paid. Now, at the time, they were getting paid like $45 an hour. What attorney is getting paid $45 an hour?
A bad one.
I mean, a bad attorney is going to make $200-300, right? I was paying my attorney, mind you, this is 20 odd years ago, $400 an hour. Now that would be close to $1,000, right? So if a law guardian is working for that little money, how bad do they have to be as an attorney that that's all they can make? And my attorney, her name's Karen, right, would sit there and she'd go, they are the worst of the worst. They can't make it out in the real world. They more off. I mean, I could share hours because she just went off on them all the time, especially the one that was handling our case. She was so incompetent. And I've shared this story before that I went into court one time myself against the law guardian. And the judge looked at the law guardian and said to her, he knows the law better than you. You might want to go reread it. Right. I mean, that's how bad she was. But the judges have to rely on them. Same thing with the psychologists, right? Court appointed psychologists. There are some very, very good ones. There really are. A lot of them are in it for the true purpose, which is they want to help the kids. There's a lot of bad ones too. A lot of bad ones. And the judges rely on that. And sometimes they become friends with these people and they trust them. So they have to rely on written testimony, the word of the litigants being true, which it rarely, if ever, is. Both sides, by the way. You know, there's he's right, she's right, and the truth is in the middle, usually, right? Because everybody's clouded by their perceptions. It's in the best of cases. They have to rely on the other third-party information they're given. And like I said, they got about a half hour to make this decision. And again, I hate defending them, but the truth of the matter is they're in a no-win situation because no matter what they do, it's going to be wrong. Rarely, if ever, do they make a decision that's perfect over the long haul. You got to remember, you're making a decision. Let's say it was today, right? 2026 for an infant. They're making a decision for what's going to happen in, say, 2038 or 2040. That's, you know, again, I'm not trying to defend them, but I am, right? In the sense that you can't come back on them 15 years later and say, well, you screwed up. That's why they get basically judicial immunity that way. But there needs to be some accountability also, to your point, Lindsay, right? It's whether it's, you know, in theory, the appellate court's supposed to do it. And I hear people, I'm going to appeal. Don't waste your time. So again, we did studies back in New York. The number of cases that are overturned on appeal is less than 1% to 3%, depending on which part of the state you were in New York, 20 odd years ago. So it's different now, I'm sure. Probably not, but you're at best 1% to 3%. And guess who gets the case again? It gets sent right back to the same judge who you just beat on appeal. You think that's not going to come into play? Your ass is screwed, buddy. Screwed. And an appeal case is thousands of dollars. They're a waste of time unless you can point to something specifically in the law that was violated, which is what guys don't do. All right. Don't bother. You're not going to win. It's not going to work.
I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments. I'm listening, but
I know you are. I'm kind of scanning them too. But again, this is all advice I give to guys, right? When I'm working with them individually on their cases, because I do divorce coaching with that, right? I don't advertise it a lot, but I do it. And I say to them, they'll come to me, like I had one Christmas time. I got screwed. I'm going to file an appeal. And we went through the whole thing. And to be fair, based on the law, he had a pretty decent chance. But when I explained to him, okay, if you go through this, here's what you got, the filing fees, he's going to have an attorney. You do not want to try and appeal on your own. Those rarely work unless you know the law cold. All right. And I know, well, I don't now, but New York state law back in the day, I knew as good as any attorney. The judge even said so. Okay. I would not presume to know that now. And I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving legal advice. But unless you can specifically point in the law how the judge violated it, you're wasting your time. This guy had a point in the law. But even if he won, I said to him, what are you going to get out of it? Well, it'll get, sent to another judge. No, it won't. It's going back to the same judge. I mean, rarely, if ever, will they take a judge off a case. It happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but it is. I don't know the percentages, but it's probably less than half of 1%.
You typically have to prove that there's some prejudice against.
Good luck trying to do that.
Good luck trying to do that. But anyway, I mean, and ultimately, again, it comes back to the judges are overburdened. They're making a split-second decision after they're basically doing a split-second decision on, say, they've been given a very bad summary of a, say, TV show or series or book series, and they're trying to make an entire judgment based on like a really potentially bad thing, like say Star Wars, and it's talking frog convinces orphan son to kill father, and that's the judgment call they're making. They're making a judgment call based on that rather than the entirety of the entire series, because that's all the time they have, and they got to move on to the next one. So the whole system is rotten. And again, we're back to the definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. So we have to do something about the whole system. We're right now, this Mississippi bill, it's better than nothing, but I still maintain that it's patching a hole. We're basically putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg and hoping that we can, run a couple.
Oh, I agree, but it's a start, Lindsay. So again, well, let's go back to the states that have passed it, right? All of them have seen so one of the arguments they make is this will put more of a burden on the court system and the judges. It's actually the exact opposite, because every case or every state that's passed it, the caseload has dropped because there's no incentive to fight, right? Doesn't affect child support. I hate to tell you, not one state correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know of one state that has passed shared parenting that wiped out child support in that case. Not one. So it's irrelevant. The child support argument is irrelevant, right? So it comes down to, if it creates a presumption in the parent, forget everything else, in the parent's mind that, all right, there's no sense in us in getting in a war. And my ex spent $300,000 fighting me. I spent about $100 and then took on my own case. That's $400,000 between the two of us. Imagine what our kids could have gotten for that. I could have put that in the bank in 2000. What would that be worth now? What was the stock market back then? About 3,000. It's at 50 roughly today. If I had just thrown it in a small growth fund, it'd be worth well over $1 million that could be handed to the kids. I could have bought them all a brand new house with that money, right? Or you could pay for college or whatever, right? Pick your poison on that. But no, what we do is we transfer the family's wealth to the attorneys, and they go buy a new boat and a second home with it, right? It's, the average divorce, I love how they pick, the average divorce is only about $10,000. That's because there are cases that don't get litigated. But the ones that go into family court, at best, you're looking at 25, at best, right? And oh, by the way, you pay that retainer, you don't get it back. Right. So, I talked to a guy recently, the lawyer wanted a $15,000 retainer. I said, you give him that $15,000, you're never getting it back. Well, what if he doesn't use it all? Doesn't matter. It's his. Right. Not saying don't use an attorney. You should in most cases, unless you're willing to learn the law, but understand that, because the attorneys aren't going to tell you that. It's in the paperwork that it's there, but they're not going to tell you that. So again, these are all factors when you, like we talked about earlier, fighting over $50 a month or whatever. You take all that acrimony away, the caseload goes down for the judges, right? The children are better off because the parents aren't fighting each other. You think the kids don't know what's going on? I got a fool for you. You're a fool. Kids know everything. Everything. Okay? Both parents are better off because they're not as stressed and dealing with that. And they don't have the financial abilities and all that stuff that they have to worry about. Everybody wins except for two people, the judge and the two attorneys, 3 people. They make a lot less money. And they're the ones that, Mississippi Today chose to interview 8 divorce attorneys to get their opinion. Never come to me. They ain't going to do that because I'll hit them with a dose of reality. I know this shit. I have studied it. I should write a book on this. People actually have, but, it's sad how, divorce happens. It's inevitable in some cases. I understand that, right? It's just going to happen. It's a fact of life. You're not going to stop it. You can reduce it, hopefully. That would be the best thing, but it's going to happen. Well, instead of trying to create basically an adversarial system akin to criminal court, how about we do everything we can to remove as much acrimony as we can, make it as easy for both parties and, more importantly, the children, because that's all that really matters, and just move on with our lives instead of spending, in my case, 12 years fighting in family court. And I won in the end because I wasn't going to back down, because my kids needed me to fight, and they, to this day, appreciate that I did, but it never should have been that way. And there was no reason for it other than she wanted a war. And it effed my kids up in some ways.
You also have to wonder whether or not the divorce rate would drop if they didn't have the ability to get everything, because
we don't have to wonder. Kentucky proved that it does. It dropped 25%. Oops. Yeah, I mean, if you're not giving women the incentive to, file for divorce, which they do 80% of the time, I'm averaging there, because they know they're gonna get the kids, the child support, and everything else, and then go bug Ray and Rico. You take away that incentive, and divorce will naturally go down. They'll be more likely to work it out, which again reduces the caseload.
It also protects the children.
And that's ultimately everything I'm saying. In the end, I'm fighting for the children, right? I don't honestly give two shits about either parent. I'm not going to lie to you, right? I mean, I do, but all I care about is
but in many cases, and this is true, I see it more on the mother's side, but I've seen dads that do it too. They're so busy trying to punish their ex or get back at their ex that they hate their ex more than they love their children. And the kids are the ones who suffer. And I mean, very rarely is there one person who's just all good and one person who's all bad.
It's never the case.
It's almost never the case. Are there cases? Yes, there are. There's always exceptions to every rule. But when I talk to people on both sides about this, I'm like, okay, well, what about the kids? What do you kids think? Well, what are you doing to the kids? Oh, well, but no, I don't want to hear the argument about your ex or this or that. I want to know, are you taking your children into consideration? Are you actually taking your children into consideration? Or are you just so focused on trying to get back at the other person because your relationship ended that you've stopped caring about your kids? And unfortunately, if I ask this question, a lot of guys, to their credit, will stop and think, but a lot of women, unfortunately, will sit there and say, or at least in my experience, will sit there and say, well, it's for my kids. And I'll be like, really? How? Yeah. Explain it to me. Pretend I'm stupid and explain it to me. Explain it to me like I'm 5. Go get the crayons and explain it to me. And when they try and explain it to me, all I hear is me, I, me, I. They're using their children saying it's for the kids, when really, no, it's for you.
Well, that's what they're telling themselves, that so they can justify their action.
It's a self-justification of, I'm doing this for my children. Well, my children will be happier. Wouldn't they be happier with access? No, wouldn't they be happier with access to a loving parent? Shouldn't you, as a loving parent, want them to have as much access to as many loving adults as possible? Like aunts, grandparents, uncles, cousins. Like, why would you want to take a loving parent away from them? Are you that pissed that he doesn't want you, Karen?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Guy Felice said, Dan, you look upset. I'm not upset at all. I'm actually, if you notice, I'm chuckling. I know I'm red. 1, I'm sitting in a room with no AC and it's 85 freaking degrees in here. 2, I'm being treated for skin cancer and I have to put this god awful cream on, which turns me like a lob. I don't use filters. You're actually looking at a filter. I had to turn down the red because I am a lobster right now. No, I am not in the least bit upset. I'm actually chuckling at a lot of the comments because I think they're hilarious. But going back to the whole acrimony thing, because when I work with guys, to your point, Lindsay, one of the first things I try and ascertain is, are they going to war because they want to get back at the mother? I won't work with those guys. And I can usually figure it out in about 5 minutes, right? What are you battling for? If you're battling because you want to remain a father and you want to see your kids, you want to take care of them, you got my support. I get an inkling that they're just out for revenge, I will not work with them. And I will tell them. And it's very easy to spot. It's very easy to spot if you know how to ask the right questions, right? Well, why do you want to do this? Well, that bitch. No, no. Okay. Right. That's all I need to hear. And I'm done. Right. Doesn't mean you can't be angry at your ex by all means, but for context of what we're talking about, she's not your bitch. She's your ex-wife and the mother of your children. Right. So why do you want to take away the mother of your children from your children? And, whatever answer they give me will determine whether I'm going to work with them or not, because that's what needs to happen on the other side. I wish the attorneys would do this. And again, both of us have interviewed attorneys. I want to get David Pizarro back on, who's a divorce attorney, to talk about some of this stuff, because a good attorney will actually do everything they can to avoid conflict. My attorney was that way. She would say to me, Dan, this ain't worth fighting. Or she would say to me, you go handle this. You don't need me for it. Right? If it's something simple, cut and dry, because she knew I knew the law pretty well. So she could have made a lot more money than she did, but she was brutally honest with me. And she would call me out when I was being nasty. We're not doing that, Dan. No. And that's why I love her to this day. And I've sent her easily 50 potential clients, easily that, right, over the years. She's not practicing anymore, but because of that, because she was brutally honest with people. And she's the exception, not the rule. My ex's attorney was in it for the money. He filed we were in court every 4 to 6 weeks. He would file the most frivolous of motions. Dan was 5 minutes late picking up the kids. Well, yeah, Your Honor, I was caught in a traffic jam. Here's, by the way, the traffic report from that day. This was an actual, right? Dan was 5 minutes late from getting the kids, so the mother denied him access to them. Blah, blah, blah. We need to revisit how much time he's having with the children. So I walked in there and I went, here you go, Your Honor. I didn't even have my attorney with me. Here's the traffic report from that day. I was stuck on the highway due to an accident. I was on my way. What would you want me to do? The judge just looked and goes, really? Why are we here? Case dismissed. So, stuff like that happens. If your argument is always that I'm doing it for the kids, it rarely, if ever, is.
No, when I counsel guys, because I'll do some of the same stuff you do, and they open with, well, I'd like to see my kids, or I haven't seen my kids in a while. That's one thing I'll usually start to listen. The only one I have ever stuck around for was a guy who said, I need to get my kids away from the mother. And I said, why? Because that's a red flag. Turns out she was pimping one of the kids out. She was
and that's legit, right? Then I'll go balls to the wall for that person, right? But they better have some proof.
And he had proof. And his daughter she called him because she was put out on a corner. And he came to get her. And that's when he took his wife to court. And I was like, all right, well then, yes, by all means, let's get them away from that woman. That
quickly becomes a criminal case also. So
yes, that was very interesting. Trying to get the CPS to take it seriously, though, because Dad was the one complaining. Of course, I think CPS is just a racket in most cases.
That's a whole other show.
That's a whole other show. But it's just to come back around to what we were kind of sort of talking about is that family court, these kind of bills, equal share parenting, again, is it going to fix the whole system? No. Is it going to affect the kids that have already gone through the system? No. But it's better than doing nothing. This Mississippi bill, is it a wonderful bill? It's run of the mill. I would say that the
I would give
argument
it a B. I would give it a B.
that be, but I mean, it it is heartening to see so many equal shared parenting bills coming up. It means that at least some people are starting to wake up to the fact that we have a problem. Are more people? Should we be aiming for more people to wake up and realize we have a problem? Yes. And you have to throw in order to get ripples, you have to be willing to throw a rock. Someone has to start it. And it is heartening to me to see so many of these bills being proposed, whether or not they make it all the way. The fact that they're trying versus 10, 15 years ago when you might have seen one in one state.
Actually, no, Lindsay, that's wrong. I'm going to call you out on that one.
Okay.
Most states had them 20 years ago. They just went nowhere. What's changed is they're starting to get somewhere. Okay. Again, I go back to the early 2000s because I was heavily involved in lobbying for shared parenting in New York. All 50 states had a bill. Very, very wide range of things within them. Whereas now what's different, to your point, is more of them are coalescing around the same thing, right? Which is essentially a presumption that both parents are fit. And we go from there. Back then, it was way different. They were all over the place. And the difference, though, is like in New York, bills had been put in place going back 15 years. And I'm talking in 2003. All right. They never went anywhere. The reason we got as far as we did in New York is we started making noise. And this is the problem, is men are not willing to fight. They're not. They're too chicken shit. You know who is willing to fight?
Women.
Stepmothers, grandmothers, aunts. Okay. We were Fathers and Families of New York. The organization still exists, but I have no contact with it anymore because all of us have left. But Fathers and Families of New York at that time was roughly 80 members, right? We had periphery things, but it was roughly 80 of us, and only about 10 to 15 of us were actually doing stuff. The majority of them, by the way, women. Okay. 3 in particular did more work than the rest of us combined. God bless them. We got it to the point where we knew if it got to the floor, it was going to pass easily. There's 150 legislators in New York. We had 120 of them committed either because we were asking, okay, if you're telling us you're going to vote for it, co-sponsor the bill. Because if you co-sponsor a bill and then don't vote for it, you look like a fool, right? And we had both parties going in. We had a few that were non-committal. Well, I'll have to look at it, blah, 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 which is their speak for saying, I don't know what you're talking about and I don't care, right? And we had a few hardcores that were against it. 2 in particular. One was Deborah Glick, who is still a legislator in New York. She's the one in the news right now trying to force New York City to turn off its lights at 11 p.m. That bitch. I hate her with every fiber of my being. Okay. She's a radical lesbian who told her staff never to talk to a man, period. Okay. And Carl Heastie was the other one. Both sat on the committee. Carl Heastie is now the head of the Democratic Party in the legislature, in the House. Okay. In New York. So shared parenting is never going to go through because Carl Heastie will never bring it to a vote. We had everybody else. They blocked it in committee, and Sheldon Silver, who ended up in prison, blocked it because he was the head, right, on their recommendation. Otherwise, New York would have shared parenting. We had the New York Post came out in favor of it. The Albany Times Union came out in favor of it. Rotterdam something or other. They all did op-eds saying this bill is good. And all the bill said, we stripped it down to basically presumption of shared parenting, 50-50, and go out from there. That's all it was. Other bills like to put in other stuff. It was just a basic bill, which is not far from what Mississippi's doing. That's what happened. And it didn't pass because of 2 people, right? And that's where if we had had more men step up, New York would have shared parenting now. And just to give you perspective, at one point, mind you, this is prior social media, MySpace wasn't even out yet. We put out the word, fax them. The bill, all the facts said was, I support bill, I forget the number, pass it, right? They had over 10,000 faxes in one morning. They called us begging us to call off the dogs. Please stop. You have drained all our fax machines. Nothing else can get through. And we're like, then give us our, because we wanted the hearing committee. We got the hearing committee, right? That's what it would take. It doesn't take a million men. It takes about 10,000 in a state. You could change it like that. Men won't do it. There's my rant. I'll let you finish up. We only got about 5 minutes left.
So there's a gentleman in our comments that said it needs to be introduced at the federal level. No, it does not.
Can't be.
It can't be. It's a state's issue. So there goes that.
I wish it could be at the federal level.
It could be, but it's not within the federal purview.
It's the Constitution, actually. It's a constitutional issue.
Someone else over on Facebook trying to get some comments in. Oh, I lost it. I lost it years ago. Ask Mr. Squirrel.
I was about to say the same thing. They want to know what your social media is, I guess.
Oh, my social media? Well, I'm not a guest. I am his co-host. I thought that was a good idea. I don't know. But I am Squirrel Girl 1988 on TikTok, which I have not been on in forever, but you can go see all my old stuff. And then I'm Squirrel Girl 1988 on Facebook as well. I'm just Squirrel Girl on YouTube. My body of work is nowhere near as impressive as Dan's because I'm raising two small humans.
No, you're as impressive. You just don't do as much. That's different. You have two very good reasons why. Mom.
You see me mute my mic as I was yelling at my pterodactyl child who's screeching.
Crotch goblins, as you, I think, have called them.
Crotch goblins. Yes, my crotch goblins.
Go on.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, happy children make for, it's a book of faces. Duh. No, I'm kidding.
No, he's right, though. What's Facebook? Unfortunately, I have to say, I have over 300,000 followers on Facebook. So
I'm almost to 1,000. I'm so excited. And
by the way, credit to Ryan, the unmarried father, for telling me to get on Facebook. He's like, dude, you're missing out. And I was like, who was it that said, oh, Larry said, what's Facebook? I was like, no, I ain't doing Facebook. In 18 months, I got 300,000 followers. So there's definitely a following there. And they are actually the most active group of all the ones I have. So yeah, go on Facebook.
Yeah, I get a lot of comments. I do a lot of battling, battle with some of the trolls that come after me.
You like the troll hunt more than I do.
I like to play with my food. It's so much fun.
But I was doing it a little bit over the weekend, but I don't like to do too much of it. But yeah, I mean, follow Lindsay for sure. I mean, she was doing daily posts that were rocking. I haven't seen them recently, but I haven't been on.
Well, no, I had them already posted for Women's History Month. I was doing a whole run of women who have helped the fathers' rights movement and done things for men. I started with Erin Pizzi, and then my back half of the month just vanished.
It was Facebook. So I had the same thing happen. I had a bunch of posts that didn't post. It's Meta being Meta. Whole other topic of discussion. But yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm on TikTok, which is a shit show at this point. TikTok is throttling the crap out of me. If you're following me on TikTok, you're missing out on a ton of content. Same for Lindsay. We both post far more on YouTube and Facebook because we can. There is stuff I can never put on TikTok because they'll just block or ban me the minute I post it. So follow us on the other ones. You know, I always say YouTube's my primary, Facebook is, or Meta, I say, is second. Lindsay, I think that pretty much applies to you at this point.
Facebook is my biggest one right now. And then YouTube is on pause right now because I'm having some issues. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, well, that's Meta. Country said, I want to see Dan get the next YouTube plaque. That's 1 million followers. So y'all better start fucking following me if you're not. All right. Although I just got a whole rash of new ones. So thank you for those of you who joined in. All right, we've got about a minute left. Guys, really good show. I thought it was,
I thought it was a good show.
it's a hot button topic. I'm actually pleasantly surprised because it was mostly supportive. We were seeing in the comments. We had the exceptions, but that's a change, right? If we had done this show 5 years ago, it would have been 95% negative, and they would have probably tried. They probably did try and get us banned, but it would have done that. But I do think things are changing, like a snail going through peanut butter, dragging a 400-ton anchor, but they're changing, and I would encourage every single one of you, whether you're in the States or another country, reach out to your representatives. If you're in the States, it's at the state level. It's not the federal level. All right. Reach out to them, see where they stand on shared parenting. Ask them why they have whatever position they have. I live in North Carolina. It's going nowhere in North Carolina. There's no group pushing for it because I don't want to take it on alone. I just don't have that kind of time. But it's going nowhere in North Carolina. But I have spoken to my representatives and several others. Remember, there's elections coming. One of the most powerful things you can have is to reach out to them and say, where do you stand on shared parenting? My vote determines whether I vote for you, what your answer is. But don't tell them what answer you're looking for. Because more often than not, they'll give you the feminist answer. And then you just reply back to them, okay, you just lost my vote. And then they'll freak. It's kind of fun, actually. All right. Any final thoughts, Linz?
Nope. We will see y'all next week. Thank you for being here. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.